it does have its practical application. Let's see what Dr. Eyhab has to say. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Let me start first by expressing my pleasure meeting you almost every semester. And let me tell you that whenever I fill the shoes of a presentation giver, I get honored, I get pleased by your presence. Without further ado, today we're going to talk about pragmatic equivalence in translation, and seeing that life is a succession of communication-based events and speech acts, we are subconsciously revolving around the domain of pragmatics. We are orbiting the domain of pragmatics. Without further ado, we're going to start by breaking down the words making up this title. First, we're going to talk about what pragmatics is, and we have many definitions for pragmatics. One of them is the analysis of what we mean. Okay? And usually we have a difference between semantics and pragmatics. And this difference can be shown by the fact that we can say that semantics can be represented by the fact that what is this, or what does X mean? This is semantics. But pragmatics can be represented by the fact that, or by the following question of what do you mean by X? So this line has to be drawn from the beginning so that we can distinguish between the two seemingly related disciplines. And we also need to know that pragmatics first emerged when philosopher Charles Morris, 1938, outlined the discipline of semiotics, ending up with syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. And we can see that syntax is the common factor between the three disciplines. Now let's go and see some of the definitions of pragmatics. Number one is it's the study of how the same utterance may have different meanings in different situations. So it is interesting to know that the same utterance in different contexts might have different meanings. It doesn't retain the meaning that it has linguistically speaking. The second one is the study of how language is used in communication. And we just mentioned that life is just a succession of context or communication-based speech events. It's the study of meaning in relation to speech situation, and the last one is study of meaning as communicated by a speaker and, of course, or a writer, and interpreted by a listener. Now, in order to make the presentation as interesting as possible, I tried to bring some practical examples so that things would be crystal clear about what we are going to talk about. And we know that we are being conservative in scope. It would be neither desirable nor possible to talk about or to cover all things related to pragmatics. So I'm going to be very selective. Now, why is pragmatics interesting and why is it frustrating? Now, it's considered to be interesting because it enables us to know how people make sense of each other linguistically. Now, it is frustrating on the other hand because it requires us to know what people have in mind, and here lies the crux of this field. Here lies the heart of the field. Now, look at this. Now, a humorous or interesting anecdote to tell to illustrate this is the following. I knew that Professor George Yule used to teach here in Saudi Arabia many years ago. And when he first arrived in Saudi Arabia, he said that he used to respond to the routine question of how do you do or how are you, with his routine responses of okay, fine, good. Now, with the passage of time, he discovered that he was not pragmatically blending in with the environment he was working for. Because he said he looked weird and bizarre using okay, fine, or okay. And when he asked the same question to people around him, they used to answer with what is equivalent to praise be to Allah, alhamdulillah. So he gave up. He gave up using okay, fine, or good, and adopted the new choice of saying alhamdulillah or praise be to Allah. Now, why do you think he did that? He did that. He wanted to be pragmatically appropriate in that new social setting, and the response he used to give was not inaccurate, I mean in pronunciation or in the vocabulary needed, but it did convey the meaning he was a social outsider who answered in an unexpected way. So that was our first practical example today to illustrate what we are talking about, pragmatics. Now, have a look at this, please. In a certain context of situation where a man is asking his friend to email him an urgent message, the phrase "I have Wi-Fi" clearly means he can email him the message, even though he didn't express it explicitly, saying that I will email it to you. Since I have the means to do that, I'm going to email you. Now look at this cartoon, and let's see how the same utterance has different meaning. Now, what about the same utterance carrying different message if said in such different contexts as the following? He has Wi-Fi. Here, Bahim is standing without a line behind him. So it has different meaning, though the same utterance is uttered. Now, again, another example. Look at this. I don't know if you can read it. People are shooting. They are using guns. Tell the men to move out. Why, sir? The rent's too high. So the reason behind the utterance has different meaning according to the context it is used in. For example, tell the men to move out, maybe for reason of danger. Maybe some planes are bombing the area, etc. Now, there is a woman sitting on a park bench and a large dog lying on the ground in front of the bench. A man comes along and sits down on the bench, and the following conversation occurred. Man, does your dog bite? The woman, no. Now, the man reaches down to pet the dog. The dog bites the man's hand. Man, ouch, hey, you said your dog doesn't bite. Woman, he doesn't, but that is not my dog. So both of them are right, both of them are correct in their speech, but it seems that we have what we call here in pragmatics diathesis of person maybe is missing here. That's why the message, or we have what we call failure in communication in pragmatics. Okay? Now, by the same token, pragmatic failure occurs in the following situation. Teacher, Glenn, how do you spell crocodile? Glenn, K-R-O-K. Teacher, no, that's wrong. Glenn, maybe it's wrong, but you asked me how I spell it. Again, the absence of accurate person diaxis is the reason behind the failure in communication in this situation. Now, we move to equivalence. We said that we are breaking down the components of the title. Pragmatic equivalence in translation. So we finished talking about pragmatic, now we're talking about equivalence. It is a central concept, yet controversial because people, linguists and translators fall into two different camps. Some of them advocate the presence of equivalence, others claim the opposite because they say it damages the message and it doesn't have any clear-cut features. Now, equivalence is the relationship holding between source language words and their target language counterparts. We have many typologies developed according to the rank on the word, sentence, text level, and according to the type of meaning, denotative, connotative, pragmatic, and text normative, etc. Now, in denotative, we know that we refer to the same thing in real world, in target and source text with the same words. Like, for example, we say the father and up or der Vater in German. Connotative refers to keeping the associations that come up with certain words, and it differs from one language to another. For example, mother, for example, has the same connotation in English and Arabic culture. It has, or it carries warmth, compassion, tenderness, etc. But for example, the word owl, which is bird, in English it is symbol for wisdom, while in Arabic it is symbol for pessimism. So we have, or connotations are not maintained the same way in the two different cultures. Pragmatic is to give or try to leave the same effect left on the native speakers of the source language, to leave the same effect on the target language native speakers. That's why when we want to give a translation of anything pragmatically, you need to stand behind the perspective of the target language perspective and ask yourself what they say or how they view this in that language. Now, one example from literature is drawn from the translation of a novel originally written by Najib Mahfouz, يوم قتل الزعيم, the day the leader was assassinated. And we come across a colloquial expression at one point in Najib Mahfouz's novel, the day the leader was assassinated. We come across the threat phrase, Haru Uswid. Now, the translators translated it as black be his day. Now, we don't know if the native speaker of English comes across this. Would it leave the same effect left on the minds of Arabic speakers? But a more suitable pragmatic rendering, such as damn him or woe to him, would have undoubtedly been more appropriate, pragmatically speaking. Now, another example comes from the English bard Shakespeare in his opening lines of the 18th sonnet. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. I myself translated this way last night trying to leave the same effect. Now, because the summer exalted and celebrated in England is by no means the same face-scorching summer in the Arabian Gulf countries, I suggest the following translating, replacing the word summer in the source text by the spring being the pleasant season in this region, and to be pragmatically blending in with the whole picture. هل من ندى بحسنك يباهيك أيام الربيع بل أنت أبهى منه صحوا واعتدال لا يضيع. So it's just an attempt trying to keep the assonance and the rhyme, and we replace the whole season and try to be pragmatically appropriate and blending in with the culture of the target language.
Sorry,
yes.
Translated.
Yes, I did. Actually, we have many translations of Shakespeare's sonnets. The first was by Jabra Ibrahim Jabra, the Palestinian who died at the beginning of the 1990s. And the second outstanding translation was given by Kamal Abu-Dib, who is a Syrian professor of comparative literature at Oxford. All right. Now, let's go to the Holy Quran and see some examples from the Holy Quran. Pragmatic equivalence is not merely restricted to literary works. Let's try to see examples from the Holy Quran. وَإِذَا رَأَيْتُمُ تُعْجِبُكَ أَجْسَامُهُمْ يَقُولُوا تَسْمَعُ لِقَوْلِهِمْ كَأَنَّهُمْ خُشُبٌ مُّسَنَّدٌ. This expression comes from the Holy Quran. And the translation given by Abdullah Yusuf Ali, they are as worthless as hollow pieces of timber propped up, unable to stand on their own. Now, we don't know if, again, an English native speaker read this, would it leave the same effect on his mind? Now, this has, of course, in Arabic culture, has certain cultural background that makes us use khushab musannad. For example, the expression khushab musannad refers to the hypocrites, rendered through a prefacing translation, worthless as, etc. Culturally now, this is important, the Arabs used to put planks of timber against the wall at the back of their houses when they were not needed. And as such, the planks of wood were useless most of the time. This expression reflects a metonymy for the person who is useless and worthless in the community. Now, pragmatically, and to leave the same effect left on native speakers of Arabic, would better perceive as being useless as an old rag. So we have departed the literal or following the literal wording of the source text in order to reach pragmatic equivalence in the target language. Another example, وَإِذَا خَلَوْا عَضُّوا عَلَيْكُمُ الْأَنَامِلَ مِنَ الْغَيْبِ. Now, but when they are alone, they bite off the very tips of their fingers at you in their rage. Again, Abdullah Yusuf Ali. Now, the cultural expression, Abdul Anamil, which is also provided with the prefaced rendering to bite off the very tips of their fingers, this is a cultural habit among some Arabs who express their anger or envy through biting the side of their index finger. Now, in English, they don't express their envy or rage the same way. What do? We should be looking for a pragmatic equivalent that has the same effect on the target language speakers to stamp their feet out of rage or to gnash their teeth or grit their teeth. So again, the behavior itself is different from one culture to another, so we are concerned with looking for the pragmatic equivalent for that expression. Now, the phrasal verb to fire away could generally, in a certain context of situation, mean to open fire on an enemy. However, watch the following short clip of video and let's try to give a pragmatic equivalent to the same utterance but in a different situation, which is political interview. We try to plug some amplifiers so that you can hear it.
That was it. How did that go? What did you talk to them about this morning? I was talking a lot about the Arab Spring and about Syria. I still believe, in spite of all the difficulties, we should stick with the Arab Spring. The idea of the growth of democracies in these countries is a good thing. Things seem to be a little more optimistic then, perhaps, than they do now. Is that safe to say? Obviously, we had the terrible events of the murder of your ambassador in Libya, which was truly shocking and awful. Do you mind if I ask you a lot of dumb American questions? Fire away.
So, the same utterance, fire away, has been used here, but it carries a different message. Again, we'll listen to it for the last time.
That was it. How did that go? What did you talk to them about this morning? I was talking a lot about the Arab Spring and about Syria. I still believe, in spite of all the difficulties, we should stick with the Arab Spring. The idea of the growth of democracies in these countries is a good thing. Things seem to be a little more optimistic then, perhaps, than they do now. Is that safe to say? Obviously, we had the terrible events of the murder of your ambassador in Libya, which was truly shocking and awful. Do you mind if I ask you a lot of dumb American questions? Fire away.
So back to our presentation. Fire away here has been used differently. Of course, here if we want to translate it, we just say اسأل ما بدالك أطلق العنان لأسئلتك, though the word ask literally has never been explicitly mentioned. Okay? Now, the last thing, beware, implicatures must not be confused with idiomatic meaning. Idiomatic meaning is conventional and its interpretation depends on a good mastery of the linguistic system rather than on interpretation. For instance, the following exchange: shall we go for a walk? Could I take a rain check on that? Now, the ignorance of this expression would lead to a failure in communication. And we know that the interpretation depends on knowing the meaning of the expression. Take a rain check in American English and will be, if you don't mind, we will do it another time. While in the case of shall we go for a walk, it's raining. Now, although it is not explicitly mentioned that I'm sorry, we cannot go, or it could mean two different things. Either no thanks, or I don't want to get wet, or okay, but let's take an umbrella, etc. So we have different things in implicature, and we have to draw a line to distinguish between idiomatic expressions and implicatures, and we know that implicatures in the world of pragmatics divided into two main parts: conversational and conventional. And conversational depends on context, conventional do not. Conversational implicatures are further subdivided into three main different ones: those generalized, particularized, and scalar ones. Thank you very much for your patience and careful listening. And if you have any questions, please blast away with questions.
Thank you very much.
I use the synonym for it. Yeah. Blast away.
Yes. Now, does anyone have any questions? Thank you so much, Doctor. Wonderful presentation and very humorous. Yes, Doctor.
Let's start. Thank you so much for your informative presentation. For the question, actually, particularly one about there's a term called lost in translation. Lots of things are being lost in translation, by the way, particularly move from one language to another. And this really brings the question of the concentration on the experience, the translation imparts on the listener or the reader in the target context. Okay, might differ from one place to another. So particularly it's very important and very dangerous when you translate the Holy Quran's ayat. It's not verses. I have no issue with verses. I don't know ayat, not verses. So how do we possibly manage to kind of strike the balance between the actual
working.
Yeah, and target pragmatic, or the effect that we want to target.
Okay.
Is there a kind of threshold?
Okay. Thank you very much for your question, which is very important. Now, we need to keep in mind something which is very important at the beginning, that when we translate the Holy Quran, it stops to be the same Holy Quran in Arabic that we have in Arabic. So it ceases to be the same Holy Quran in the source text. Now, the translations of the Holy Quran has been divided into two parts. Those, for example, like Ali's, is considered to be source text-oriented translation. It tries to maintain the same style in Arabic, and he tries to convey it to English. But that has created problems because English does not work that way. For example, min nutfatin khalaqna, he translates it as from a sperm drop we created him, trying to keep min nutfatin at the beginning. But in English it doesn't sound natural or acceptable, or as acceptable as if you leave it until the end. And this is what we call in stylistics a vivid heightedness. So we cannot keep vivid heightedness again the same way. Also, we have many other styles in the Quran. For example, shifts in person and shifts in tenses. وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ صَالِحًا. So he's talking about just one person. خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا. The same. So we have shift in person from one singular into plural. Also, وَكَانَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكَ عَظِيمًا. Did it stop? It has never. Also, we have a shift in tense. So, although it looks to be in the past, but it is in the present. So, these things need to be kept in mind. And again, we don't have optimal or perfect translation of the Quran in all aspects, because many things are lost, as you mentioned. With regard to poetry, Raphael 1991 said that in order for a poem to be translated, or in order to keep the spirit living the same way as it is in the source text, a translator needs to be a poet. And Peter Newmark, 1988, said that translation, we don't have a final translation. It is a process. We don't have a product, so it keeps changing. If you translate text today, if you come back to it a month later, you would have a different way. But he also stressed the fact that if you want to translate poetry, you are more likely to come up with a new form of the source text. That's it. Yes. Any other questions?
Yes. Well, thank you very much for this presentation. My question is regarding how to guarantee the effect on the target people. How can you choose one meaning and think and believe that this is truly what was meant in the original text, and translate it to the target reader? Why don't we just keep the close translation to the semantic level, literal, meaning, and leave it for the target reader to make their own interpretation? Because even for the source reader, different readers may interact with the text differently and have different understandings, and that's why texts are dynamic and interactive. And how can you fix the meaning and think this is what's meant by the original text?
Now, a gargantuan task of the translators has been always to be a prisoner of the source text producer's intention. So now we have many of the translations that have ended up in fiasco. They brought defamation to the source text creator. For example, Fitzgerald, when he tried to translate Rubaiyat al-Khayyam, it was bad work. But when Ahmad Rami did the same work into Arabic, he ended up with an excellent magnum opus, if you want. So now, so another task. So this entails that the meant by the source text creator. So we seek to find the same effect left. Otherwise, it's useless. We don't need to translate it if we don't want to convey the same message intended by or in the source text. That's it. Thank you.
But how can you guarantee the same message? I mean, if somebody says,
we always say that an excellent reader is an excellent translator is an excellent reader. So if he doesn't have an excellent command of two languages, it is the translator's problem. It's not a problem with the field itself. Yes?
May I add something? I came across some certain texts in King James Bible.
Yes.
And it doesn't seem like a very good English structure. I don't know.
Are you talking about the English structure or the Arabic version?
No, the English.
Okay. King James translation is a translation given by a group of theologians and linguists and translators, and one of them was Noam Chomsky's father. He was involved in that work, and it's very important to keep in mind, and it's called the International Version, by the way. It's very important to know that the translation of the Bible is a bone of contention. It's a very controversial topic, and it has been under heat of debate, because we never know for certain, for sure, what the source text was, in which language. Some say it was in Aramaic, some say in Hebrew. So it is copy of copies.
Yeah.
So the translation that we have today is translation of copies of copies. We don't know for sure what the source text is.
No, but as this
Yes.
structure, the English structure doesn't seem like even though it's time, like the Shakespearean.
Yes.
This was the
Okay. This is not
typical.
Yeah, this was the 1611. This is the level of language. This is the phrase. It's early modern English.
Yeah.
It's early modern.
But was it typical of that time even?
Yes, of course.
Yes.
And look,
And if we keep matter of mind that it should be in some way or another being a sacred text or holy text. If we keep comparing to the Holy Quran, there is a difference. There's a difference in terms of structure or yes. Yeah.
Did the translator of King James employ the same
I wasn't born that day. Yes, Dr.
First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Eyhab for his wonderful presentation. And I think a translator should not only be bilingual, but he should be bicultural. For example, let me give you an example. In Arab countries, especially in Egypt and Syria, we use the word hukuma to refer to the wife or wives. But if you translate that opinion, if you translate it as government or in the Ministry of Interior, so it will give a bad impression as well. And here, in this way, we have to use idiomatic translation, and we can use an old board and chain. So the translator here, he has to focus on the meaning, and he has to be fully aware of both cultures, the target language and the source language. And again, I would like to thank Mr. Eyhab for his really wonderful and interesting presentation.
And this entails that our wives have more control over us than being the whole government, not only the Ministry of Interior. Yes?
Anyone else? Yeah, Doctor. Yeah, Doctor.
Thank you. You know, this reminds me of something. I've done it a long time back in translation. Like a translation can never be a display. This is what people normally see. They try to use scientific approaches to translation to come up with accurate text, but it never happens. Why? Because of pragmatics, because of different cultural perspectives. For example, I remember 2 verses written by Umar bin Abi Rabi'ah. And the verses said, خليلي من مقام دعاني وألم الغداة بالأضعان لا تلوم بآل زينب إن القلب بآل زينب عاني. Those two verses has been translated by Nicholson. If you see the exact translation of these 2 verses, you'll see a different word, different meaning. I start with something. Oh, comrades, call me out of the blame. Oh, comrades, call me out of the blame. What do you understand out of that? Khaliliya in Arabic becomes comrade in Nicholson's version. And comrade, you know what's comrade? A Russian expression for a very intimate friend. But in Arabic we say Ibrahim al-Khalil because he's Khalilullah, he's a very intimate friend to God. You see? So if you look into that literally, then definitely you lose meaning. You lose meaning. You will never come to a true version. It's because of that, because of that, you will definitely have diversion in translation. Definitely you will have. Why? Because you are not aware of others' cultures. So pragmatics is the real problem for translation, for translators. And who understands all pragmatic features to keep it in mind once you translate? 1% or 1 by billion. That's what, And you see a number of difficulties in Holy Quran. Not only Ali, Yusuf, Ali, and others, See, وَإِذَا فَارَتْ النُّورِ Surah Nuh. See the way they translate it. If what is tanur in Arabic? What is the word tanur in Arabic? It's a kind of oven where we bake bread. But when you translate it into English, what will you say? You translate it. I'm not a translator. What will you say? Go see it in Holy Quran. So that's why you said, if you read the translated version of the Holy Quran, you will understand, okay, people will understand in their own way, in their own perspective, but not in the actual text of the Arabic language. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes, Dr. Smith.
Thank you. This is a very prickly and ticklish question. Pragmatics is the ultimate level, right, which is actually limited. I, for one, do not believe in translation because I come from a certain philosophical perspective, and I think each language is unique and each text is unique. So when we translate, we actually would doom to failure, but we do it for others because if we do it for ourselves, we don't need it.
Absolutely.
It's something done, as they say in French, faute mieux, in want of something better. Okay, and I believe that both the Holy Quran and the Bible are unique texts. I'm not going to talk about the Bible, which is the basic language and so on and so forth, probably Aramaic. But when we do a translation, we should maybe keep the, this is just a makeshift solution. We should keep the text close to the original and add paratext explaining, but this would be very huge, yeah, absolutely, because the paratext would make the text tenfold probably as a size. But this would be interesting because this would give the, let's say, the innocent reader a perspective on the labor of the translator and of maybe the differences, the huge differences between the two languages and two cultures. There may be, because there is also a distance in culture, which I call relative distance in culture, right? You can sort of gauge it. And also between two languages, there is a certain, and this is my concept, distance, right?
Yes.
And this is what let's add a paratext, okay? Because this explains everything, you know, really. Okay, this is in Arabic, this means this, and, you know, this is what the English reader should understand, okay? So, and I want to add something. I'm going to wind up my edition. Translator's work is one of the most, how shall I say, unrewarding works. You know, and people do not regard translation as creation. Actually, translation is recreation, and it doesn't get its, you know, its worth, its recognition, social recognition. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just give me 1 minute, please. In translation studies, they refer to what you mentioned as explicitation.
Yes.
And it is divided into two main groups, obligatory and optional explicitations. Yes. And I still remember that in one translation of Najib Mahfouz's novels, it was in the source text, it was a 77-page novel.
Yes.
And when translating to French, the translator ended in about 80 or 90 pages in translation with over 60 footnotes.
Footnotes, paratext, yes.
So, though it was a bit clearer for the reader, but it was much longer than the actual text.
Yeah.
And this takes us back to John Dryden's translation of Ovid's epistles in 1680. And in the preface to the book, he mentioned 3 types of translation: metaphrase, paraphrase, and imitation. So, of course, we went for imitation, and because it allows for addition of more information for the sake of clarifying the text for the reader. That's it. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Before I finish, I would like to invite you to the next seminar, inshallah, 2 weeks later. It's by Dr. Ali Hussain Alami, General. Inshallah, you're invited. Thank you very much.